Spider, support your hot fire, Spider. We're ready.
Roger, Houston, we're ready to go.
Let it rip, Spider.
Okay, a couple more switches. Keep covering. Not far at all.
We're ready to go, rip.
Good morning, everybody. This is Northwest UFO Chasers radio broadcast. You're right in the middle of a NASA transmission. And boy, do we have some secret knowledge to unveil to you. Yeah, we know all about it. There are buildings on Mars. There's a complete hollow infrastructure inside the moon and archaeological finds that lead us to believe that a group of scientists called the Watchers, thanks for sticking around after the break there. What I was saying was a group of scientists called the Watchers inhabited the hollow moon. And the reason we know this, we have deciphered Sanskrit, cuneiform, and hieroglyphic, as well as Dogon tribe. And we correlated all of that and put it into a super huge database, a computer database and of information. And in that database, it came back and told us and showed us what are known as correlations to atomic structure and our quantum particulate makeup, if you will, or basically you could call it sacred geometric mathematical precision. And the sacred geometric formulations that were being used was the high engineering principles that were being applied to the genetic engineering that was going on the human chromosome in a gene, and they were doing some gene splicing, and they were working with balance of human nature. And when they would go too far one way, a human being could become an insane murderer, and if they were to go balance point in genetic manipulation the other way, the creature would become too docile and lazy and not want to be and work. And this is what we are a product of. But those beings were written about in ancient scriptural literature, and I can prove all of this. It's within the body of work known as the Nag Hammadi, not just, a picture, a grand picture, a greater picture that our predecessors in history left us. It was just that they envisioned these things differently, and I am on the same type. I am an ancient astronaut theorist in support of that. Those types of conjectures for ancient astronaut theory, and I'm working toward, my degree in ufology. There are going to be differences of opinion here in the way that I am communicating, the way that I have experienced the research and what I am basically unveiling to you and what the information and resources are basically telling us. This isn't something that I'm just coming out and giving you my opinion. I am basically taking the material like the Nag Hammadi and the Mahabharata, and we're taking it and we're showing linkage between elements. And in that regard, there's this linkage of the spiritual that talks about the Watchers, and that basically points at the books of Enoch. And again, if you read the books of Enoch, it talks about angels and things like that. But again, we're specifically talking about a band or a group of scientists that transported from Mars and some type of a colony that they set up on Mars, transported via a satellite of some kind that ultimately became our moon, and they encapsulated it and hid it for some reason, but basically because they were a group of scientists known as the Watchers doing genetic modification to species on Earth. That group came to Earth at Eridu, and it was a space port, just as Zechariah Sitchin had uncovered in cuneiform. But that band ultimately separated and came to Menkaura. And this was way prior to any dynastic period of Egypt. This is a group that had the knowledge of genetic engineering to and in that regard, some of the sacred geometric mathematical precision and engineering is shown in the megalithic stone construction that is underneath the sand next to the Great Pyramid at Giza and is known as the Menkaura Pad. M-E-N-K-A-U-R-A, but they spell it with an E on the end for the Menkaurens, ultimately later in time. Okay, we'll be right back after the break because that's the famous Amy Sargent Oles on the line. I'll be right back. Okay, we're coming to you right after the break here. And what we were talking about was the Menkaurens. And those Menkaurens, again, ultimately they became the Lemurians. And this is prior to 2 ice ages ago, but the land mass of Antarctica was connected to Australia, and it was floating more northerly than it is now, but there was a different circumnavigational rotation of the Earth. Or, excuse me, let me back up. There was a different rotation of the Earth, and before the cataclysmic event, but that is the great landmass of Atlantia, okay, is the Antarctica, but it was also connected to, and if you look at Google Earth and the sea levels, you will notice that what I'm trying to say here is that, and the major point to make is that there's connectivity between the peoples at South America over 40,000 years, basically in a time range between 30,000 and 40,000 years ago, at the site of Pumapunkatiwanaku. If we look at that stone construction, megalithic in nature, we also see this at Lalibela and Junta in the precision stonework. And this, again, dates back. So I'm going to make this linkage. I'm going to say that Toltecs and Menkaurens are like Peruvians and Egyptians in pre-time history. Now, a lot of this is coming to me off of the Akashic record from the Nordic Andromedan alien intelligence. And I'm tapping the universal record of life, and of course you know about this because it's the same process that Sheldon Neidl talks about at the Galactic Federation. No, I am not a member of the PAO as of yet, but I do believe that we are talking to the same Andromedan species of alien intelligence, both Sheldon and I. And I also believe Billy Meyer and Alex Collier and Ashiana Dean all talk to these Nordic Andromedan alien intelligence, and they have told me such. And so, and I know that. So anyway, the information that they're giving me, I am having a hard time articulating in English after they put this information into my memoric regions of my brain. But what they have told me is some fantastic things, like, for instance, that we have all of our total memory recall is embedded within our brain for all of the past life reincarnations that we have lived. And then they have pointed me to, like, on the website, there is the Monkla Memories video, and you should watch that, and it is of two alien UFOs that were scrambled over the top of that were hovering over the top of a lake at Lake Monkla. And when the jets get scrambled to intercept the UFOs over the top of the lake, the one pilot slams into the UFO, but he finds himself on board, and there's a story about him being put into a barrel of liquid, but he got a choice as to whether to reincarnate into another body, which was a normal, typical process. So an intelligent species in a craft above the lake, and they didn't even believe this story until they actually found the aircraft that was scrambled to intercept the UFO in the 1950s at the bottom of Lake Monkla. So it's a very interesting story. I highly recommend that. But in that regard, and us being light-bodied essences or humans that are in a metamorphosis within our bodies, becoming light beings, we're going to ultimately lose the physicality. And when we do ultimately lose our physical bodies, that is when we are going to be capable of. This is all information that came to us. Robert Bauval talks about a lot of this in representational, the Orion's belt, the hunter constellation, signifies Osiris and the Osirion in Egypt, and is male in essence. And then there's Leo, and as the way that the Sphinx and Leo is set up on the Giza Plateau, it shows how the movement from one to the other, the male and the female, patriarchal, matriarchal, but there's Horus, their son, who came to the earth to do some type of genetic manipulation. And again, these are the pieces of the puzzle. So we have this Horus, and in ancient writings, cuneiform, hieroglyphics, Sanskrit, and deciphered these stories, these ancient tales, and they're interwoven between different religions: Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, Christianity, Judaism. But the stories are all the same, and they've been handed down. And again, it's the stories of, in the books of Enoch, and the angels, and the watchers, and the scientists that were in the hollow moon, that genetically modified man that came to Eridu and ultimately became the Menkaurens. The Menkaurens circumnavigated the globe, no matter what they're teaching you in modern academia. Archaeological evidence to show that there was circumnavigation of the globe, but again, there was some type of connectivity between Africa and South America, and we believe it to be some type of a land bridge connecting where, and we look at Google Earth and we see Antarctica, and we know that von Braun, who was the head of the Nazi space agency, there's some linkage into the high technology at a base at the tip of Antarctica. We know of vortex portals, and we're chasing orbs. Vortex portals are opening up at Hesdal in Norway, and they're opening up in different locational points, and they're shooting through our atmosphere, moving from one location. As an example, Hesdal Hesdalen, Norway, to Mount Adams, Washington. But what's interesting about this is that when MUFON or one of us track and watch the portal open, which is a wormhole in our atmospheric bubble encapsulating Earth, which is also tied to the sacred geometric formulation that is being left to us by Metatron the angel. And when I get into the subject of angels, I'm talking about the connectivity that Ancient Aliens on TV talks about. We've got, like up in Pymra, New York, the connection of Moroni with Joseph Smith, the forefather of the entire Mormon religion. We've got Father Crespi receiving golden tablets from ancient Sumerians coming out of caves. And ultimately, again, the story is telling us of genetic modification of species that was created, and sometimes ancient astronaut theory talks about them being gold miners. They needed gold. They went deep into the earth somehow. Whether they transported it across the Antarctica land bridge or not, we don't know, or whether they tunneled into the earth and then tunneled back. But there are these caves at Teos, Ecuador, and they handed these golden tablets with ancient Sumerian inscriptions and writings on these golden objects that were coming out of the earth. And the stories are that the Native American Indians and the Indians of South America came out of the earth. They were giants. They had red hair. Well, red hair and giants are indicative of the gene splicing in the human genome that Stanford University has determined we have the UFO gene. And this is within the gene splicing. We're looking at it. We've determined that this is the genetic infusions that relate to the 12 constellations of life points in the universe that are on our astrological symbolism. For one, like I'm a Sagittarius, that's the hunter, Orion's belt. And we have Aquarius, and again, the 12 zodiacal points are 12 constellations that actually represent the infusion of genetic material, which is known as the star dust of life. The star dust of life was seeded throughout the universe. The stardust of life was seeded throughout the universe. Let me just say that one more time. The stardust of life was seeded throughout the universe, but ultimately ended up on planet Earth 1 million years ago, where it viably turned the stardust of life into viable genetic species for genetic engineering. In other words, the propagation of life on the Earth as it was contained within the atmospheric bubble on planet Earth generated and over a long period of time became multiple species as we know it as evolution, but one species in particular was picked out, and this is talked about in the books of Enoch. And the species that was picked out was a Homo sapien species. They found the Homo sapien species, as they were genetically modifying it, the female became very visually desirable to them, and they began to have relationships with the female species that they were genetically modifying. This got them in trouble, and they were thrown to the earth at Eridu. And again, I'm not making this up. This is what the stories are basically telling us as we're putting them into the supercomputer. And again, we've got to take another break. We're going to end the show here pretty soon. We'll be wrapping it up right after we come back. Okay, so what I want to tell everybody, basically is on the website, I have written a book. The book is still in progress. It'll always be a work in progress. We're trying to get the basic structure down with the book. It starts with an alien, extraterrestrial, external biological origination. And it goes into the subjects of giants. It goes into the subjects of everything that I just talked about. And there's a timeline. And there's also alien species. So there's a lot of neat sections to this website. This will be an ongoing story throughout all of next year in a multiple part series. So check back with us. Thanks for watching and listening. Have a good day. Bye-bye. From Northwest, UFO Chasers.